This video is sponsored by Jackson Systems. JacksonSystems.com is now carrying a full range of UEI test equipment, including the brand new Hub 6 smart probes and the fan favorite DL429 HVAC multimeter. Visit their website and sign up to buy from them. Receive a great deal with the new Shop Talk 7 promo code. You can use that one time on your purchase of a UEI instrument. So I'm sitting here with Greaves, our frequent flyer. He's going to punch out all of his holes to come over to HVAC Shop Talk and get a free interview. With your next interview is actually free. You get a sub sandwich and a drink too. And you were going to tell us about a service call that you did on a chiller system, which makes us all afraid because we don't understand, but you're going to break it down a little bit. Tell us what happened.
Yeah. So that service call from the video, if you didn't see it, we got a call out there. It's a new contract, so it's not a chiller I had ever seen before. But we had a high condensing temperature alarm. It's a train screw machine. In the video, you can hear how it's just screaming in the mechanical room. And that's pretty normal for a screw compressor. So that didn't alarm me too much. But what we had was like a 21, 22 degree temperature difference across the condensing barrel. And that's alarming. So we know if we have an increased temperature drop across a barrel like that, it's going to suggest to us water flow issues. So the first thing most of the time with a chiller system is you'll check your pumps. They usually have strainers in them, or you'll have a Y strainer somewhere near it. Your cooling tower, which is another point that you can get obstructions that could cause water flow issues. And then the chiller itself, your barrel could get the tubes plugged up. That's a lot less likely to cause that big of a pressure and temperature drop, but it is a possibility. So by the end of the video, we did discover that the strainer was plugged horrifically. Actually, it was probably one of the worst ones I've ever seen. As soon as we got that cleaned out and replaced, our temperature drop went back to about, in the end of the video, I think 4 degrees. So we were looking really good, and we were back at set point, which the chilled water for that building was set to 49 degrees. And we were good. So I went back the next morning. We decided not to do the full comprehensive PM, which was the plan. They had some contractors in the building doing some other work, so they didn't want the chiller offline if possible. But it was fine because the machine was running beautifully. 24 hours later, no issues. I went ahead and I left, carried on with my day. So later on, though, about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, dispatch called me and sent me back. They said they had water spilling out of the ceiling in several points of the building. I was a little concerned. I knew it didn't have anything directly to do with what I did. I headed back, and as soon as I got back, the lady came up to me and told me that they had several leaks in the building, and it was on the hot water side. She then informed me that she didn't expect me to have known this, but in that building, they run the boilers 365 days a year. They prefer, if the chiller is going to be looked at, they want the boilers shut down so that the building doesn't get too warm. Well, they didn't tell me that, and they had shut the machines off. So when I left, I never turned the boilers back on because I didn't know they were off. Basically, they came in the next morning, they turned the boilers back on, and we had a bunch of leaks. That's what I was dealing with when I showed up.
Wow. That's a lot of stuff, especially on your first trip there. Is that right?
It was my first trip there. We had one guy there a few weeks before that did an initial kind of a light PM on some of the other equipment. So he had been there on site and he had looked at the air handler and changed some belts and filters, etc. But he didn't look at the water side.
Now, do they consider that no harm, no foul? You weren't supposed to know that sort of thing, or were they actually agitated with your company?
No, not at all. You mean as far as knowing to turn the boilers back on?
Yes.
No, she had never told me they were shut off. They had never explained to us that they leave them on 365 days a year. So that's not something that is a typical situation.
Now, you explained to me before about why the leaking started. Now, why specifically did the pipes leak that particular time? Normally, during operation, it didn't leak.
This was a situation where I got there and there was 3 leaks. And when I got to 2 of them, there was clearly water on the floor and the ceiling tile had busted out from soaking through. But once I got my ladder and above the ceiling, everything's bone dry. Not a drip, not a drop, nothing to be seen that indicated a leak. And what happens on hot water loops a lot is you'll have joints at either fittings or actuators, valves, things like that, when we're talking about screw pipe, that will leak. But once they are running and get up to temperature, the joints and everything expands and actually seals the leaks up. So if the boiler's been running for a long time, you may not know you have any leaks. But where we had the boiler off for 24 hours with me not turning them back on, we went ahead and as soon as those boilers got kicked back on by the lady that morning, we had spurting water at several locations.
Let's go over a few things for the guys that are listening, just so they know what we're talking about. First things first, you talked about the temperature drop through the condenser. It was 20 plus. It needed to be closer to 4, you said. Is 4 the normal drop that you would expect to see?
With chillers, it's going to vary based on manufacturer, application, design, etc. But yeah, usually it's a few degrees, and it's going to be a little bit less than that for the evaporator side. But yeah, and again, when I'm talking about pressure and temperature drop, in this situation, I am referring to the water side, not the refrigerant side.
Oh, that's good that you said that. I did not say water. That's very smart. Good job there. Now, you talked about blockages in the actual tubing inside the chiller. Now, how large are these tubes? You said it was rare. So how big is each tube generally?
It's rare because usually you're not going to get an actual tube completely block. I mean, it can happen. Don't get me wrong. You can get junk that manages to get through the tower and the pump strainers and into the barrel. I've had bird skulls. I've had chunks of plastic, etc. But usually when we talk about elevated temperatures in the condenser barrel, it's going to be because the tubes haven't been brushed in a long time. So you get that mineral calcium type of deposits that build up on the inside of the pipe, because the condenser loop in a chiller system is an open loop. We go up and we pump up to the top of the building to that tower, and we're constantly having to make it up because we're misting that tower water at the top of the tower, and it runs down that plastic fill for that evaporative cooling effect. Well, we constantly lose water. We constantly have to make it up with city water. At least once a year, we want to pull those heads off, drain the machine, and brush those tubes. You ask what size? It depends on the machine. Usually anywhere from 3/8 all the way to 1 inch even.
Oh, that's a big dog if it's 1 inch, right?
Mm-hmm.
Big dog is anything above how much do you think? Just for conversation. You know, I deal with the 5 tons. So I want to hear you say something like 1 million tons. You know what I'm saying?
I was helping to get some vapor into one of our machines at a university in town, and that chiller was 2,500 tons.
I mean, it's like barely bigger than the stuff I work on. I mean, gosh.
Yeah, that machine weighs 100,000 pounds empty.
Now, that's pretty cool. When you go to work, does that mean anything to you? I'm going to work on something that weighs 100,000 pounds. Does it matter to you? Or is it like one of the things where you walk out and your kids are like, Dad, you're the greatest. And you're like, yes, I am. I'll see you guys later.
Well, that part, they could care less. My wife, my kids, they have no idea. They have no idea what I do. I'm a heat and air man. They probably just think I adjust the thermostats and stuff, or, you know, they really, and that's okay. But no, as far as me, I'm still thoroughly in awe and impressed with these machines every day that I get to work with them, for sure.
I'm totally intimidated. I'm going to go over a few more basic things, which I think I know, but I don't know. And you're going to tell me if I know. Now, when you have a chiller like this, are you serving different air handlers throughout the building that also have reheat coils on the front of them from the boiler? How does it work?
Well, in this particular school, there was one big air handler and several fan cooling units throughout the building. Yes, exactly what you said as far as reheats. That's why the boiler runs 365 a year, because they run hot water constantly to potentially temper the air for dehumidification purposes. So where you have that water set at 49 degrees, there's going to be plenty of times where that's below our dew point and help with dehumidification. In order to temper that air, we go ahead and we introduce that boiler water before it exits the supply.
You mentioned the other day that you're the most happiest in a mechanical room. How much time do you spend out of the mechanical room on those individual fan coils, fixing water leaks, etc.? Do you spend more time with those or more times right at the source there?
I probably spend more time in a mechanical room or a roof. Sometimes I end up in the building doing stuff at the end. For our branch and what I do and who I work for, typically I work on the source of the chilled water or cold air, you know, whether that's the big air handler for the building or the chiller itself.
The source sounds good. It's like the Matrix. That's great. I just watched the Matrix trilogy again, so that's why I'm using references from the Matrix. And you're Neo, so congratulations.
Thank you, Morpheus.
Oh, that's cool too. I'll take it. All right. I'll take it. One last question. You mentioned screw pipe. Now, I like this because I'm going to use my ignorance to my advantage and have people say, wow, he's stupid. Or I'm going to guess right and look like a genius. Now, screw pipe, is that just pipe that's flanged together and screwed together? Is that all you're talking about?
Well, not flanged, but actually threaded. I just mean threaded pipe.
Oh, that's all you're talking. Okay, because I've seen those large lines for like, say, sprinkler systems that are bolted together with a flange. So you don't deal with stuff like that. You deal with stuff that's just screwed together.
When you're talking about chillers and stuff, the chiller is going to have a lot of either weld pipe or flanges or Victaulic fittings and stuff like that. I was referring to screw pipe for the end or fan coil units and stuff. So once you're in the building at little fan coil units where you have hot water coils, that's going to be 3/4 inch, 1 inch pipe, screw pipe.
Oh, very cool. What's the pipe made out of?
Black iron.
I know this is second hat for a lot of the guys listening that are in commercial, but for me, this is my opportunity to learn from you. I'm not going to waste it. I'll go ahead and appear ignorant. Hey, I don't have to appear ignorant. I am ignorant. Have you been back to the place since you did the service call?
I have not. Everything's been running great ever since that. One of the fan coil units did have a leak that had continued, and we had a air bleed that failed on the coil. So once that water started going through again, it didn't shut off. So I had to valve that entire coil off out of the circuit until we can get that replaced.
So each one of these air handlers have a different air bleeder that goes on each one of them, the fan coils?
At the high point of the coil itself.
My brain's overloaded, so I'm going to call it quits for today. That's pretty much all we're going to do because I can't take any more information or I'll forget what we started with. That's how that works. It's like a typewriter. If you shove it over to the corner, other things fall off of it.
Right.
I want to thank you for coming on again. We're going to see you a lot coming up, a lot more segments. You can drop in anytime you want.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, man. You were here for the live event. You'll be invited back to another live event. You do very well with that. So I want to thank you for coming in until we see each other next time.
No, well, it's my pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
Those of us with dirty hands, blood stains intertwine, right away each morning, to grind it out another time. The faces in